The former SABC Board chairperson, Dr. Ben Ngubane, has denied changing the COO job advertisement to suit the qualifications of the former COO Hlaudi Motsoeneng. Ngubane was testifying at the State Capture Commission in Parktown, Johannesburg. This was about his tenure as the SABC Board chairperson, during which time that the former Public Protector Advocate Thuli Madonsela made damning findings in her 2014 report titled When Governance and Ethics Fail.
I never handled any advert chairperson. I don't know who said this to the Public Protector. Yes. Because there is no advert where I wrote with my hand and say, change this, change that.
Did the Public Protector, before issuing her public report, ever ask you or afford you an opportunity to say something about whatever allegation she might have been told that you were responsible for the alteration of an advert?
Yes, she invited me to a meeting, yes. And I went. So I'm not...
Did she raise this with you?
She didn't raise this issue.
This was never put to you?
No.
That there was an allegation that you altered the requirements for the position in the advert?
Chairperson, I would have asked exactly about what I asked. Show me. Show me the report.
All right, and for a wrap of today's state capture inquiry testimony, let us now cross live to our SABC News reporter, Manqoba Mchunu, who's in Parktown. Good afternoon to you, Manqoba. Thank you so much for coming through. SABC continued to be under the spotlight at the State Capture Commission today. Take us through Dr. Ngubane's testimony.
Well, certainly, Palisa, you'll know that the 2 weeks have been set aside to hear testimony relating to the SABC and, of course, and whether there was some sort of capture of the SABC by those who wanted to advance their interests. Of course, the issue today, again, the TNA breakfast briefing shows, which was the briefings that was basically run by the company, the Gupta company, the New Age, in partnership with the SABC, also coming under the spotlight, Palisa. Of course, the former board chair, Ben Ngubane, saying that, there was nothing untoward about that particular venture. He says that at the time, this was simply a new offering for the SABC, which he was hoping would help it attract more audiences. And of course, he says that at the time when they went through this undertaking, they had that vision that, they were going to attract more of those viewers. But he says, with regards to the issue of why they didn't bill the TNA for these breakfast briefings, he says that at the time, the reason why they didn't bill is because they believe that, out of this venture, they were also benefiting as the SABC. He says this was a value-adding sort of a venture for the SABC, as he says that its revenue during the time also increased due to this show, the TNA show. So he says there was nothing really untoward about that. He was also quizzed about his relationship with the Guptas. Of course, you'll recall that previously or last week, the former CEO of the SABC, Lulama Mokobo, alluding to the fact that at one point, a week after her appointment, she had been invited by Hlaudi Motsoeneng, of course, to go and meet the Guptas and to congratulate her. And he says he took her to the Gupta compound in Saxonwold. And of course, the same question being asked to the former chair as to whether he had also been taken to meet the Gupta family. And of course, he does allude to the fact that he has met the Gupta brothers on several occasions. He says that during the TNA breakfast briefing shows, he would also, meet the Gupta brothers or sit with the Gupta brothers. But he says that beyond that, he also attended some of their social events at their home in Saxonwold. But he does deny, however, that he had any or benefited them in any way through their business ventures, through their relationship with the Guptas. But of course, that was not the only issue, Palisa. He also touched on Mr. Motsoeneng. The whole afternoon, most of the part of the afternoon, dealt with the appointment or the controversial appointment of then CEO Hlaudi Motsoeneng. Of course, questions being asked as to how he could be appointed in that position without having the right qualifications. Of course, you recall that there were allegations earlier on during the 2017 inquiry that the former chair, Ben Ngubane, had altered or asked that the qualification requirements be altered to suit Hlaudi Motsoeneng to be appointed for that position. But of course, he says he has never instructed that. He insists that he has nothing to do with that advert that was advertised at the time, and that he simply was not involved in that process. He doesn't know where the public protector would have gotten that when she made those findings against him in the 2014 report. But of course, that was not the only issue. Again, we looked at the issue of his unusual 66% salary increase in 1 year. And he says at the time that the reason why this was, effected is because at the time SABC had a parity sort of a scheme or a plan that was happening at the time, which tried to fix or resolve some of the salaries of the staff to ensure that they're paid according to the work that they do. And he says that he had nothing to do with this increase. He says that he did not engineer this in his exact word. He says that, of course, he doesn't know where the public protector had gotten that, but he says this was simply a job of human resources as well as the CEO, who are the ones responsible for making that appointment. Of course, he says they found nothing bizarre about appointing Hlaudi Motsoeneng as acting CEO, because he says this was a man with people skills. And of course, he says the SABC needed Hlaudi Motsoeneng because he was a hands-on man and somebody who really was, in his own words, a troubleshooter. So somebody they could send who could speak to the staff and relay the board's messages as well as the messages of the executive at the time. So those are some of the things that have really come out. Of course, there were questions asked as to why, Hlaudi Motsoeneng was appointed despite not having a matric. And he says the reason why is because Hlaudi, we knew he could do the job, where other people that we had had before had failed to deliver.
All right, so the commission has adjourned, Manqoba. It will resume tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Do we know who will be taking the stand tomorrow?
Well, certainly, Palisa, tomorrow we're expecting the former CEO Hlaudi Motsoeneng himself to come here and give testimony here at the Commission. Of course, there's been various allegations labelled against him, including those we heard last week from some of the former members of the SABC who testified about some of his, authoritarian rule in the newsroom and some of the instructions he had given with regards to some of the things that he wanted carried out at the newsroom. And, of course, allegations of fear and that were levelled against the journalists, allegations of censorship. So there's a lot of allegations, and including these ones, of course, about his relationship, the testimony of Lulama Mokobo, about his relationships with the Gupta brothers. Those are some of the things we expect to hear from Hlaudi Motsoeneng. But of course, there are also other issues. The controversial 90% policy, African music policy that was put in place, for example, and the SABC's financial situation, which of course Hlaudi Motsoeneng has previously claimed that under him the SABC was financially sound, but of course we know that was not the point. So those are some of the issues that we expect him to come and answer to, and of course some of those serious allegations that were levelled against him by the SABC. So tomorrow we get to hear from Hlaudi Motsoeneng himself.
All right, Manqoba, we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you so much for coming through. SABC News reporter Manqoba Mchunu reporting live from the state capture inquiry in Johannesburg. And of course, we've seen today the former SABC Board chairperson, Dr. Ben Ngubane, giving his testimony. And as Manqoba said, the former COO at the SABC, Hlaudi Motsoeneng, is expected to take the stand tomorrow.